This is the INKPULP podcast. This is the INKPULP podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.
Cheers. It's espresso time. Welcome to the INKPULP podcast with me, Sean Crystal. So we've been doing this series, or I've been doing this series, on how to break into comics, because I know there's a lot of people that dream about this as a career, as I did myself. And I thought putting out some useful information would be good and on brand for INKPULP and INKPULP Instruction. So I've learned a few things along the way. I'm passing that on. Maybe you've listened to the first three parts of this series. If not, please go back. I am doing it in kind of a chronological order. So picking up where we left off. We were talking about art school or not art school. So either way, you're done with art school or you're out of high school and you want to get into the mix. You want to start pursuing a career in comics. Remember, I have my notes off screen here. I'm just going to peek sometimes. So I guess the first thing, well, let me start with a very positive message. It is the best time to want to do this because there are more options for you to put your work out there than there ever has been before. And there's a bunch of different ways an unknown creator can do this. And that's thanks mainly to the internet, things like crowdfunding. You can kickstart a comic. You can put your own comic up on Instagram. You can, just think creatively. The world is yours. I didn't have that coming up. The only way, there was no web comics. There was no internet. So the only way you could really get your work out there was to get a publisher to hire you. And that seems to be the traditional way. Get a publisher to hire you, pay you to do the work, and get it out there. Now, I think there's two paths to talk about. One path being the creator-owned path. Maybe you're a graphic novelist or you're a cartoonist, you write and draw your own stuff, but that path is for, I want to create my own stuff. And I think no matter which path you decide to go down, it's important to swim in both pools, to follow both paths. But ultimately, I think having your own creative property out there is a sound investment in yourself and your future because it's yours. And any money that sees is yours. We'll talk about all that as I go. I'm getting ahead of myself. Today's podcast, I'm going to focus on the other path, getting a publisher to hire you. In doing this, there's a few different ways this can work. There are the American mainstream publishers like Marvel and DC Comics and some smaller ones like Dark Horse Comics and Oni Press and Boom Studios that pay you a page rate. So for every page of work you do, you get paid a certain amount of money. That's a page rate. When you're at Marvel and DC, it's generally work for hire only. And what that means is you get paid more than the other publishers to produce your work. But it also means you own next to nothing of what you've drawn. And what I mean is if you're hired to draw Spider-Man, you don't own Spider-Man. So anything that's made from Spider-Man, you don't see any of that profit money. They can take your drawings, slap it on a t-shirt and sell it at Marvel Studios. You don't see a dime of it. But they pay a healthy amount of money for you to produce the work. Or, I shouldn't even say a healthy amount of money. I don't think they pay very well, honestly, but they pay more than the other publishers. Now, there are people that go to like Marvel and DC, become very successful, become very known, become very in demand, and then they start getting paid a nice wage to do it. The other way is, like, let's say you're at Dark Horse, you might get work for hire there, but you also might be hired to work on a creator project. And what that means is Dark Horse will give you a smaller page rate and also give you some ownership in the property you're working on. So you could be work for hire at Dark Horse. They hire you to draw a Hellboy series. Mike Mignola owns Hellboy, not you. So Mike will then collect any money that Hellboy makes. You get none. But let's say you approach Dark Horse, or you and a writer approach Dark Horse, or even a writer approached Dark Horse and pitched an original idea, like let's say Jeff Lemire did with Black Hammer. So then Dark Horse will pay a smaller page rate, but also you get ownership. Not all ownership. You'll share it, and it's different. Every contract's different, and the same thing at Oni. So those are kind of like two different paths, or a few different paths. I shouldn't say two. How do you get there? How do you get in front of these people? What do you do to get work, either as a freelancer or as a creator? This is where your hustle kicks in. You've got to get people to know you, to know your work, to see your work. Again, it's easier than ever now thanks to social media. You can create a fan base online of just people who like what you do, and that can get you noticed. There's plenty of people I know that got noticed that way. There's also conventions, comic book conventions, Comic-Cons as they're known. These are great ways to get seen. You can get a table in Artist Alley, or get space in Artist Alley, and what that means is you pay for a spot and you set up shop and you put your work out and you have a banner behind you and you advertise whatever it is you're trying to do. If it's trying to get recognized as a superhero artist, you do that. Maybe you're just selling art. Maybe you're selling prints. There's a lot of things you can do there. But going to conventions and having a presence is important. And you network while there. You meet the artist sitting next to you. You walk around, see what artists you like, see what artists you don't like. Talk to artists that you think are traveling a path that you want to travel on. Get feedback. Show your portfolio around. All that jazz. Now, you have to be accepted into Artist Alley to get a table. So smaller cons, it's easier if you're a no-name, if you're not a name talent yet. Bigger cons like New York Comic Con are very difficult if you're not a name talent yet. But with time, you'll get there. Even still, I'd recommend going to those cons, the larger cons, not getting a table like New York Comic Con. Walk around Artist Alley, talk to a lot of artists. Get to know the artist community. Get them to know you. My first job I received because I did just that. I went to Orlando MegaCon. I showed artists who I liked my work and got feedback and criticism and stuff to improve upon. And ultimately, one of those artists liked my work so much, that artist recommended me for a job. So that's a great way to network and get into the creative community. I think first is probably great. But if you see an editor walking around, or go to Marvel booth, go to the DC booth, find out when they're doing portfolio reviews, get to know who the editors are, and just approach them, and quick and easy. Don't sweat them. Don't seem desperate, but just introduce yourself. Tell them what you are, what you want to do, and put a name to a face. If you're lucky, you get a business card with an email address, and then you've got a contact. Don't harass anyone. Don't constantly email anyone. These editors are getting pounded with emails from people like you or me that were trying to break in. So be patient and be persistent. And that's what cons are great for, networking. I mean, maybe you'll get invited to one of the parties. Maybe you'll get invited to a dinner. You just never know. Amazing things happen at these conventions, and I can't recommend enough regularly attending them as a guest or just as a consumer. Just get a ticket, walk around Artist Alley, show your work around, get feedback, ask questions. How do I draw hands better? Whatever it is, listen to these artists. And I've met a lot of people this way who I just like, and I like to see them grow, and then I see them get hired, and it's like, oh shit, that's fucking awesome. And I've recommended people myself for jobs. So that's kind of like what I would suggest in terms of following the the American mainstream publisher, freelancer, create our own path. I mean, if you've got a graphic novel you want to shop around, cons are a great place to do that too. Have a pitch ready. If you're a no-name talent, it's hard to get people to pay attention to you, but you can. But if you spend enough time online nurturing a fan base and nurturing this idea and this pitch online so other people see it, you never know. But that's a good place to drop off a pitch, or put a name to a face, meet someone and say, hey, I've got a graphic novel I'd like to pitch you at a later date. This is New York Comic Con. I can see you are slammed. You're going to go home with more pitches. And I've seen editors checking out of hotel rooms and their trash can is just filled with pitches. I mean, they probably go through them quick, and if there's no interest, just dump it. So maybe just network and send them the pitch at a later time when they're back at their desk and they have more time to really pay attention to it. And I think that will kind of cover that area. Again, if you have any questions, please list them below in the comments. I'm here to answer. And you asking the question is great, because there's probably a bunch of other people that have the same question and want to know. So then they can see the answer there, and it'll just stay there on YouTube. So, yeah, I think that's about it for today. Thank you for watching part 4, How to Break Into Comics. Next week, part 5. Peace.
This is the INKPULP podcast. This is the INKPULP podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.